Okay, so Todd, basically we're going to be talking here about Westrock Coffee. So my question for you, I know you live and work in Rwanda.
Yes.
So my first question to you is, what brought you down there?
My initial introduction to Rwanda was in, it's the fall of 2005. I was working for a small venture capital fund here in Little Rock, and I received a phone call from an acquaintance of mine who was in the banking business here in Little Rock. And he called and was telling me that he was considering moving his family to Rwanda to help start a microfinance bank. And he was wanting to know if I'd be interested in moving my family over there with him to get it started. It was working for an organization called Opportunity International out of Chicago. They do microfinance banks, start banks, and run banks in several countries, third world countries around the world. And they were wanting to go in Rwanda, and he was going to help start that, and he was looking for a partner to go with him. Now, to give you a little of my background, I couldn't have told you where Rwanda was in 2005, except that I knew it was somewhere in Africa. I grew up in a small rural community in Arkansas and had gone to college in Texas and had lived in Tennessee. And prior to that phone conversation, my worldview was limited basically between Tennessee and Texas. And so I was living here in Little Rock. This is where my wife was from, and so was very content to stay here. And really, as I was first introduced to the idea, it didn't sound like a good one for me. Had two young kids, and with the sort of the ignorance that most of us have towards Africa, it just sounded fairly scary and not something I wanted to do.
But what have you decided to do?
Yeah, well, it was a fairly long process, but to limit the time of telling the whole story, basically, my wife and I looked at it as an opportunity to give back, to serve, to do something that to practice what we said we believed, which was to live for something more than ourselves, and to offer our kids an experience and to see in the way the world really works, and the challenges that people face around the world that we take so for granted here in the U.S., all the blessings we have. And it was a commitment of 2 years, and we felt like this wasn't something we had to do forever, but we could definitely take that and experience that for 2 years, and so we chose to do it.
So how was it?
2 years.
How will you describe your experience there living there in 2 years? And
I would say
was it fulfilling for
sure,
you? Did you have a chance to give back, like you said earlier?
Yeah. I mean, you obviously go in with sort of definitely bold ideas and thoughts that you're really going to make a difference, and you realize what you really do is limited, and the problems are much bigger than anything you can solve by yourself. But at the same time, you do realize that that you hope that what you are doing does have a lasting impact in the small segment, in the small group of people that you do come in contact with. And the bank that we started over there is doing very well. They have a gentleman running it now who had some actual banking experience in third world countries. He knows what he's doing, and it's making a wonderful impact in Rwanda. And I'm just happy to have been a part of getting it off the ground.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're going to come back over there and talk about your work on Rwanda, especially with Westrock Coffee. But I want to stress on one thing. When you mentioned give back, give back what?
Yeah.
What after? What? Tell me about your
What's that
idea
mean?
of giving back. What? Yeah.
Well, I guess to expand on that further, I didn't think of it in those terms at the time necessarily, but I guess what I've over the last 5-6 years I've realized that first off, I was blessed, lucky enough to be born in a country where we had so many resources and access to education and healthcare and so many things that for example, my grandfather was a sharecropper. My great-grandfather, was a sharecropper. My grandfather was a small farmer. My dad's a fairly large farmer. We live in a country where over generations, if we work hard enough, you can actually have a chance to accumulate some wealth and transfer that to the next generation. And I was, a benefactor of being in this country and working. You're growing up in a family that wasn't afraid to work hard and was blessed with that. And I guess what I saw an opportunity to do in the context of going to work in Rwanda was I was, had the opportunity to be educated at a great college. I had some business skills that I had attained over the first 10, 12 years of my career. And it was a way for me to take those skills and integrate that into an infrastructure, a country that had not had the opportunities that I had. And so for me, it was a way to hopefully take some experience, some opportunities that have been given to me and try to expand those beyond just enriching myself with those gifts.
Does the history of the country have something to do with your decision to move there? Especially, Rwanda went through a genocide in 1994, cost basically 800,000 lives. I would say near 1 million lives. So,
well, sure, that definitely had some impact from the standpoint that my first trip over there in early 2006, I had obviously had no context to know where it had come from, but I had to get to experience firsthand where it was headed, and that was appealing to me because it looked like it was a country on the right track, trying to do the right things from a standpoint of from doing business and trying to take care of its people. All countries have all sorts of problems, but overall, it felt like just the people in general had a hope for a better tomorrow.
The people had a hope for a better tomorrow.
Yeah, and if the people have hope for a better tomorrow, and the country and the government is open to having people from the outside come in and invest in their country financially and even live there like we did, then that was appealing. And obviously, I think all of that came in the case of Rwanda from the context of where they had come from. Had Rwanda been maybe more of what I stereotypically had in my mind of Africa prior to going, of a place of corruption and a place of, you can't get anything done unless you know the right people, and it's all about enriching those in power. If I would have experienced that, I probably wouldn't have gone. To me, they had built up a legitimate framework to do business in a way that ultimately not only could benefit the company, but more importantly, benefit the people.
Okay. Last question about you and your family in Rwanda. If a family, an American family is watching us right now, listening to what you say, will you recommend them to go over there and visit if they have the chance and opportunity to go there in Rwanda and work? What will you tell them? Go?
Yeah,
Stay?
definitely go. I'm going back in 2 months. I've been back a lot with my job now. My wife is going back for her first time this summer to Rwanda after moving back in 2008. So she's excited, but hope to take our kids over there again next summer for their first trip back. But if you have an opportunity to visit or live, I would definitely encourage people. I'm not suggesting it was always easy, and nor was it always something that felt good at the time. But now looking back after having some time to reflect on those 2 years, I will probably, those 2 years will always be an inflection point in my life when my worldview was changed. The way my kids saw the world was changed. The way we just functioned as a family was changed by that 2 years experience. And for me, being someone that never even had any idea that I would ever even travel to Europe, much less live in Africa, that was a big stretch for me. And so I guess my point is, you don't have to feel called to want to work or serve in Africa to go over there. If you get the chance to just to extend one's view of the world, Africa, Asia, wherever, South America, just encourage people to go, because it just gives you a whole new idea and appreciation for the way the world works and the challenges most people have to face every day that we take for granted here in the United States.
Okay. We're going to come back talking about Westrock work in Rwanda, but I want to talk about the company first. Okay. Westrock, you guys, the company was created, if I remember, about 3 years ago in 2009.
Yes.
If my research is right. Now in the U.S., tell me, 130 million Americans drink coffee, I've been told. We have a little bit more than 1,200 roaster in America, and basically 60% of the market of those people who bring coffee to the consumer own basically controlled by supermarket. I mean, big supermarket, and 40% I would say by small store like coffee shop. And so, where does Westrock fit in all that?
Well, I think to some degree we're still trying to figure out where our best niche is. You know, we're in a unique position to where, unlike most coffee companies that maybe start out locally and build a following up in either their city that they're in or region, one of our first customers actually was Walmart. And I think a lot of that had to do with, to some degree, our story, kind of what we were trying to do in the context of Rwanda. Most coffee roasters, they got in the business because they love coffee. They're passionate for coffee. They enjoy coffee, and all the artistic features of coffee and roasting and all of that. And there's a fascination with where coffee comes from, you know, the origin, and that it's not grown in the United States. It just has an appeal that is very personal in nature. We kind of came at coffee not because we loved coffee per se.
Because of what?
We did not come to roasting coffee because we loved coffee. We came roasting coffee because we wanted to help Rwanda. That was our angle. And even to this day, although we roast coffee from origins all around the world, our main focus is to be a promoter of Rwandan coffee, because Rwanda has two main exports, tea and coffee.
Yes, exactly.
And what we wanted to be was an instrument to help promote Rwandan coffee in the context of the United States. Historically, most Rwandan coffee has been sold into Europe and roasted by European roasters and consumed by European coffee drinkers. On the context of the U.S., there has been Rwandan coffee here in the past, but it's usually been some of the nicest coffees, some of the very sort of, if you're looking at coffee in a pyramid of quality, at the very top quality levels of Rwandan coffee. But there's a lot of other lower qualities that are still really good, that there wasn't enough significant volume coming out of Rwanda that any one person could actually get a hold of to sell in a place like Walmart. And that's what we were trying, that was our niche, is we could go to someone like Walmart and say, we can move enough coffee from Rwanda to the U.S. to roast and package for you to promote Rwandan coffee, and it not just be 100 pounds here, 100 pounds at a local coffee shop, but here's several dozen containers, you know, tens of thousands of pounds of coffee that we can buy at a fair price in Rwanda and bring it over and roast it and expose the American consumer to what that is all about.
You've been involved on this, this for the past 3 years. How many tons of coffee you guys moving here in the U.S. coming from Rwanda every year?
Now, I would say, let me just think off the top of my head, you know, probably the rough math is probably 10. So far, we've probably done 10 containers on average the past 3 years. So one container is 40,000 pounds. So that's 400,000 pounds of green coffee that we have brought over from Rwanda to the U.S. And then, honestly, in the big scheme of things, that's not a lot of coffee. We would love to do a lot more, but we obviously are bringing over what we have on the other side from a retailer standpoint, what they're willing to sell. And of course, as we hope to continue to grow our roasting business, the ideal scenario would be that all the coffee that we mill and export at our production plant in Kigali, we actually could sell to ourselves and roast and package here in the U.S. rather than having to sell to third parties in Europe. Right now, most of our coffee goes to third parties, but in an ideal scenario, we'd love to roast it all ourselves.
But you cannot describe yourself as a small company, because actually it seems like you guys basically control all the commodity chain from the producer down in Rwanda to the retailer here.
Well, we that is somewhat unique in what we do, is that we buy from the producers and we ultimately sell to the retailer, and most roasters don't have that direct relationship all the way back. Most roasters will buy coffee from importers who are the ones we typically sell to out of Rwanda. There is a, for lack of a better term, a middleman that sits in between an origin like Rwanda, Brazil, or anywhere else, and a roaster. And people always want to demonize the middleman as someone who's taking advantage, but the truth is there's a value in what they do, because, for example, if I'm a large roaster and I need a certain type of coffee, and that coffee can be found in Brazil and maybe also Honduras and maybe in Rwanda, the importer is the one who's responsible for finding the best value for that roaster. And he might buy coffee from Brazil, he might buy it from Rwanda, he might buy it from Honduras. And so that's a value add, takes away some risks that the roaster might have.
Yes.
We're taking on a lot more risk as a roaster, because we're hoping to depend on one origin, where we're at risk for what if there's a drought in Rwanda and we're selling all this coffee in the U.S. and we can't get as much coffee from Rwanda next year that we had the year before, which can easily happen in any sort of agricultural commodity. We're at more of a risk than a typical roaster would be. But we're okay with that, because, again, our whole reason for being is to help Rwandan coffee, so we have incentive to see that doesn't happen.
This is not charity. Don't tell me that the whole idea is just to help the Rwanda government, the Rwanda coffee, I would say, but you also try to make money.
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, there's no sustainability in trying to do it as a charity.
Have you guys made money so far?
Well, as an organization as a whole, no, we still have got a ways to go. But the good news is our export business in Rwanda has definitely, in this past season, we made money, which was great, because we were able to actually reinvest that and grow more in Rwanda. What we hope to do is that as an organization as a whole, we can be profitable, because if we can make profits, ideally what we want to do with those is plow those back into growing our business and getting closer to the producer to kind of help them invest in what they're doing. Because if we can train them, supply them with fertilizers and knowledge and how to take care of their trees, that helps them with their yields, which allows them to make more money, which obviously helps us as well, which is, in the ideal world, that's how capitalism should work. Is that there's a competitive force there, and because of that competitive force, everyone's driven to help everyone lift themselves up, and of course that's what we're trying to do. Because if we went in and tried to do it for just charity reasons alone, at some point the money runs out, and then what have you really done? You've just set something up for failure. In the context of what I'm talking about, a coffee business, of course there's reasons and times for charity, but in exporting coffee, ultimately I don't see how you would ever consider doing that in some sort of charitable fashion, because that will only last for a certain amount of time. You want to be able to have enough profits to ultimately reinvest and keep it going, and hopefully impact more people.
I definitely understand that. A vice president for Starbucks once said, talking about the Rwanda coffee, says if the coffee is properly processed, it should rank among the top 20 in the world. Is that something?
We've found that to be true. Part of the challenges you have in Rwanda is on the processing side, especially in the field, through the wet mill process. It's a challenge to get a consistent cup profile that will be consistent among a container of coffee or amongst a crop, ideally. And that's one of the reasons that we're there, is that we are trying to invest in people and in processes to be a trusted counterparty, so to speak, for folks like Starbucks. If they, the challenge with Starbucks, they're obviously large and have a lot of volume that they need. They have a challenge of really committing to buying a lot of Rwanda coffee, because it may not be the same coffee next year as it was this year due to those quality concerns. The volumes may not be there because they hadn't historically been able to count on someone to be able to deliver. And that's what on the ground in Rwanda we're trying to be, is that consistent party that the producers trust, that they're going to get a fair price and they're going to get paid on time, and that we're not trying to just get it at the cheapest price so we can make the most money, and that from the roasters outside of ourselves that may want Rwandan coffee, that they can trust us, that when we say we're going to deliver it on a certain date, that it gets there. And then if something happens and there's problems through transport, which obviously a lot of things are out of control when you're moving coffee from the heart of Africa to Seattle, exactly. That we can stand behind that promise. And that's what we're trying to develop.
So Todd, tell me, the Rwandan coffee, 12 years ago, just go back 12 years ago, it was grade very, 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 very low. Mm-hmm. To what do you attribute the improvement of the quality of Rwandan coffee? You've been there, you worked there, and you're still going back there.
I think that that big change has really been, inherently the quality was always there, because the quality of the coffee comes from the trees and the geography, the soil. The quality was always there.
Okay.
It was that the Rwandan producers weren't adequately trained on how to take care of the trees, how to nourish their trees, and how to process the coffee once it was picked from the tree. And the U.S. government and several other organizations played a role in trying to build better processes on the ground to better manage that whole process. And there was an organization that's still in existence that works over there called Spread, that its whole purpose, and TechnoServe and others, have been to try to train the producers on how to basically get the quality that's inherently in the coffee in Rwanda, but basically don't mess it up by not knowing how to take care of your tree, not taking care of it properly, and not processing it properly. If you do all those things right, that coffee is really nice coffee.
I got a quote from an executive in your company. I don't know who said that, but I checked on your website. Basically says that to be able to come up with, to ensure the quality of the finished coffee product, you got to be able to build good relationship with those who produce them. Explain.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to the consistency issue, is that you have to be able to, on the ground, dealing with these producers. Rwanda, different than a lot of countries where coffee is produced, they're all small lot producers, meaning there are no plantations where you can have a very large area and manage the quality and consistency of the product by basically you managing a large swath of land as a plantation owner or an exporter or whatnot. So you're having to work with individual farmers, and I've heard estimates in Rwanda of there's 300,000 to 500,000.
500,000 farmers.
Yeah, farmers. And so how do you create a consistent exportable product when you're having to deal with 500,000 farmers? That's a challenge. It will continue to be a challenge. But what we mean by the word trust is that in the past, the producers have experienced people that maybe did not pay either a fair price that they felt maybe was or was not a fair price. They've also had people maybe come in one year and buy their product and not be there the next year as a buyer. They've had people that had taken advantage of them in some way through, basically saying, hey, I'm going to buy your coffee, but it's really not this good. It's only worth this, and pay them a wrong price or not pick it up. All sorts of, you could come up with 1,000 different scenarios where maybe they felt like they were mistreated or actually were mistreated. And so what we are trying to make an effort to do is to be consistent, this is the program. And what we do in the case of most farmers is we actually finance their ability to go out and pick the coffee and pay them on time. A lot of times, that might be a delay in getting paid by, hey, if you'll bring the cherries to us, we'll pay you once we sell it. And we basically pre-finance. We buy it directly from them, so we carry the risk ultimately from when we put money out in the field to have the cherries ultimately processed and come to us. We call it pre-financing, but in essence, we're their bank. We're the producer's bank. And that's usually done through a cooperative at a wet mill level, where we're basically financing the wet mill to go out and buy the cherries from the cooperative members that own the wet mill. And so we ultimately serve as their bank. And in doing that, we hope to build trust that, we can offer them money at a much cheaper interest rate than they could get at a local bank that may or may not even be willing to loan them money for a commodity that's super risky. And
super risky.
Yeah.
And do they deliver the product on time?
Well, in most cases they do. There's always people that, for whatever reason, things in their control or out of their control, that it doesn't work out as they had planned. And obviously, a big part of our job on the ground over there is trying to find those folks that are trustworthy, hardworking, that want to grow, and they want their business and their family to succeed and be able to hopefully be in a better place tomorrow than they are today. And we want to find those people and continue to work with them. And through doing that, you have to weed out some people that maybe are trying to take advantage of the situation, or they're not competent, business people. And half of our daily challenge is working with those people.